I'm committed to supporting you and helping you with your property questions by providing what I hope is valuable content. There's always a lot to cover. That is the nature of the housing market. But with your support, we at Move IQ are committed to making it happen. So if you do find it valuable and useful, I'd be super grateful if you would hit the subscribe button, become part of our community, and we will continue delivering what we do. Thanks so much. Hello, everybody. Very warm welcome to the podcast. I'm super grateful for you all making the time to talk to us. If we could just perhaps begin by asking if people could just tell us your name and where you work and what part of the country you're talking to us about.
Hi, Phil. Yeah, I'm Toby Martin. I'm a director of Reside, and we're a lettings agency in the beautiful Georgian city of Bath.
Lucky you. What a beautiful place to work.
Very lucky.
Angie, tell us about yourself and what you get up to.
I'm Angie Cooney. I'm based in Rugeley in Staffordshire, sales and lettings, and I own a company called C Residential.
C Residential. I seem to have handed out some awards to C Residential in the past.
You have 18 of them.
Yes.
Not that I'm counting.
Well, thank you for joining us. Louise.
Hi, good morning. I'm Louise. I have an agency, Lismore Asset Management, and I'm based in Edinburgh, covering East Lothian as well. So speaking this morning from sunny Scotland.
And is that in rentals or sales or a bit of both?
In lettings and property management, so okay. Just the letting side of things.
I bet that's a busy market in Edinburgh.
It's very busy.
Yes.
It is.
Martin.
Hi, I'm Martin Baum of Reed and Baum Estate Agents based in Leicestershire in the East Midlands.
Terrific, thank you. And Matt, last but not least.
Matt Cohen, I'm Managing Director of Matthew Anthony Estate Agents. We're based in Worthing in West Sussex doing sales and lettings.
We had a very happy time in Worthing last summer, filming location. Great place to be operating.
Yeah, it's lovely down here, yeah.
Well, thank you all. I really, really do appreciate it. I recently caught up with your friend and mine, Nathan Emerson from Propertymark, on the podcast, and we talked about all of the different indices and the different sets of data that are released at different times about the housing market. And, of course, they make for different predictions and forecasts, and that can get confusing. We were obviously talking about the national housing market. But our audience at Move IQ is really interested in delving deeper and getting actually your perspectives from the front line about what's happening in your particular local area. So that's why I was keen to get you on and get your thoughts. Can we perhaps start with Toby and the market in Bath, if we could? What's happening in the rental market down in Bath at the moment?
Yeah, of course. So really, for the last 12 months or so, unfortunately, it's been a bit of a story of a real mismatch between the demand we're seeing from tenants or prospective tenants who are actively looking to rent a home in Bath and the supply of rental properties to the market. And to give you a bit of context on that, if you wind back the clock to 2019, then on average, every month in the Bath area, we were seeing around 1,100 properties coming to the market. And if you fast forward to just last year, that had dwindled down to around just 700 properties. So a real lack of available stock. So that's gone down by about 35% just in a few years. And conversely, we're seeing more and more people moving to Bath and wanting to rent in the area. Yeah. In the 10 years leading up to the last census, our city had grown by about 10%, which is well above national average. So unfortunately, what we're seeing is too many people trying to rent too few homes. And the effect that has had is to drive up rents, which are really higher now than I ever remember them being. So average rent just last year was around £2,100 in Bath, which was up by nearly 50% on just 3 years before.
Really?
So staggering. Yes. What that kind of mismatch between supply and demand has done.
Do you see that situation changing at all?
I wish that I could be positive about that.
Yeah.
But realistically, I think the only thing that will change that situation is a greater supply of rental homes. And as we've seen over the last few years, that has dropped significantly. And so there has to be something to encourage investors, encourage landlords to come to the sector, to invest in the sector, and to increase that supply. And at the moment, that's lacking.
Have you got any investors buying at the moment? No, they're all selling.
It's a bit of a struggle, if I'm honest. I mean, investors are always entering and exiting the sector, but at the moment, I wouldn't say that that buy to let is ripe with investors.
No, it's tough. It's tough. Really tough for tenants.
It is. It is sadly, and I hate to say it, it's a tough time to be a tenant.
Yeah.
The levels of competition for every property that goes on the market are unparalleled. So I've spoken to a lot of tenants in very stressful situations, needing to find rental property, and we're not always able to help. It can be relatively desperate at times. Unfortunately, I'm sorry to be slightly downbeat.
No, I mean it's that's a statement of fact. We are where we are, and it's not pleasant, as you say. How are things in Loughborough, Martin? Is it a buyer's market up there?
I think without a shadow of doubt, up in Leicestershire, we've seen a shift from a very much a seller's market to what I would call a normal housing market, Phil. For us to be saying that it's a pure buyer's market, I'd say it would be a large list of properties available, lots of sellers looking and fishing in a small pool of buyers, and maybe a buyer would be going from one house to the next, trying to get the lowest price possible. It's certainly not that kind of market, but it is true to say that there are more houses available for sale now than this time last year. There's more choice for buyers to be able to go out there and purchase. But with the stability of interest rates and stability of mortgage rates, we've seen more buyers coming into the marketplace. But it feels like a traditional, healthy spring active housing market as we sit here today.
Good, great. And Staffordshire, Angie, how are you finding things?
Well, I'm slightly older than most of the people here, so I've worked through sort of every market, really. I've looked quickly at the first 11 weeks for the year, comparing 2023 to 2024. And if I just use Staffordshire, and I've wrote it down, there were 4,391 sales in the first 11 weeks from January to third week in March. And this year, there's 5,156 in the same period. That's an uplift of 17.4%. And interestingly, what I did do is actually go through the whole of the West Midlands, and that figure's 18.5%. So from my point of view, really encouraging indeed. And a bit like Martin, really, it's what I consider a normal market.
And you've got good instructions coming on. If you get fresh instructions.
We are market leader, and I think that yes, but I think that if you, it's about consistency, isn't it? If you always keep just consistently doing what you should be doing, you will always find buyers, you will always find sellers.
Well, the world moves on, doesn't it? People do get married and have babies and change jobs and get divorced and die, and those are the things that actually move a market. And I think that, understandably, there's been a lot of caution around, but and nobody likes making these big decisions without all the facts. But actually, life does go on.
But I also think if you sit and listen to scaremongers, Phil, in the world, you'll never do anything. The housing market moves on, irrespective of whether it's there or there.
Not really on the topic of scaremongers, but it is an uncertainty. So rent control up in Scotland, Louise, that's coming to an end. How can you just talk to us sort of widely about that and the impacts that you might imagine?
So the last, I'd say, 36 months in the Scottish rental sector has been a bit of a roller coaster, with emergency cost of living legislation being extended. And we're now coming towards the end of that. But actually what we move into is almost new parameters around an element of rent control. So the market is tremendously busy for tenants trying to find properties, which is incredibly tough. But the real driver in the market at the moment is because there have been rent controls. Many landlords who historically would have just left the rent as they were now face increased overheads, and they feel that they've been backed into a corner where they will take in the capped rental increase. What then comes about in the near future is the ability to actually increase the rent to any level, but this can be challenged by a tenant, and there is a rent officer with a tapering system that would take a view on it in terms of it being in line with the market or not.
Okay.
The really unfortunate thing is that a lot of landlords now feel that this sector is quite difficult to operate in. And if they get an opportunity to exit, then they will, which means that I think an unintended consequence of rent control is landlords leaving the sector. Any properties that are new and available, the rents are up. Tenants are I would probably say applying for things which don't even fit, but it is the only thing which is available. The flip side is then, as an agent, when you're looking after things for your landlord client, you have to do an awful lot of sifting for both the tenant and the landlord to feel that it's the age-old cliche, the right property, the right tenant, the right landlord. And we all know that that's a great blend, and there's longevity to that, and it works for both sides. But that's hard. And at the end of the day, you also want to do your best for your landlord client. You want to do the best for your tenant. So, as I say, the unintended consequence of the rent controls, albeit they're formally coming to an end, the new deal for tenants is in consultation at the moment. So it's uncharted territory, and it's a bit choppy, is probably the explain it.
Uncertain. Matthew, you're down on the coast. Lucky you. Any trends coming from that direction? What are you seeing?
Down in sunny Worthing. One of the things that we've seen continue, and it was very prevalent during the pandemic, was people moving down to the coast. We had vast numbers of people move out of the city and come down here. So we've got Brighton to our east, which is super expensive, sort of London by the sea. So people then look at what else is around, and Worthing sort of fits that kind of happy medium between being on the coast and having a reasonable price. So we've continued to see that happen. We get a lot of downsizers. When you're in Worthing, I don't know if you ventured over to sort of Goring, lots of bungalows over there, sort of 1950s and 60s bungalows, which suit people that want to downsize. And so we continue to see that, really. There are still a lot of first-time buyers. We're getting back into the market at the moment. I think one of the things we saw last year, obviously, was that people put their move on hold because of borrowing costs. They've sort of accepted where those costs now are, or they're at least sort of relatively level. And so they're coming back into the market at the moment, which is good to get that bottom end of the market moving as well.
I haven't actually figured it out, but I'd hazard a guess that our interest rates, where they are at the moment, if we looked into history, we're probably about on average where borrowing naturally would be. It's just we got rather used to very cheap money.
It got very cheap, didn't it? Yeah, I think it was people. What we found was people were getting rates at sort of 2%, and then suddenly within 6 months to buy the same house was going to cost them twice the amount. So they just said, well, we're not going to do it. It's still costing them the same amount, but it's not going to change anytime soon. So they, as everyone's been alluding to, people still need to move, don't they? So it costs what it costs, and that's what we're seeing at the moment.
Last year, you told us that if you knew a sale or letting agent was a qualified member of a professional body maintaining high industry standards, you would choose them over an agent who was not. Well, agents who are members of Propertymark are not only regulated, but qualified too. There are currently over 18,000 members right across the UK, all adhering to a strict code of conduct and membership rules. And that is why we at Move IQ endorse what they do. To find your local agent, look for Propertymark and let them know I sent you. We've been using the term at Move IQ, cautious optimism. talking about the market. But of course, we can't ignore things like inflation, interest rates, employment. We've got elections coming up, not just in this country, but in America. We've got conflicts in the world. So there's a lot of elements and sort of moving parts and variables that added to which it is said that we are officially still in a recession. So I just wanted to touch on those and get your thoughts, whether they are impacting people's decisions and thought processes in your local markets. Angie, what advice are you giving to vendors at the moment if they come and see you and they're wondering when to sell? What are you saying?
What my advice to them is, there ever really a good time or a bad time? There needs, we alluded to it earlier, people need to move for all different types of reasons. Those reasons don't change. It's always been the same since God was a boy. So quite frankly, if you're buying and selling in the same market, well, one can't track the other.
Yeah.
People just need to have a really solid financial base in place, don't they? And then take the plunge to get on with their lives and plans, because I've gone through, as an agent, I've gone through eye-watering interest rates. I've gone through 15% in the 90s, the stock market crash in the 80s, the COVID pandemic, you name it, there'll always be something going on. But people's desire, and whether you buy or rent, will remain. The emotion behind moving and wanting to move for whatever reason will remain the same. What we've got to do is just help them with that and help them make that decision and help them get on with their lives.
You make such a valid point, which is often people struggle to keep at the forefront of their minds. That if you're moving in the same market, if you're selling and buying in the same market, it makes little difference.
That's right. The thing is, the house prices become irrelevant. It's all about if you can get 50 quid off one.
Yeah.
If you're selling for 50 quid less and getting 50 quid off on the one you're buying, it's just figures.
Louise, up in Edinburgh, how are you sort of managing expectations? Because it is difficult. It's difficult for renters and also for landlords and their sort of tax situations and things. How are you managing?
Absolutely. I think the best thing you can do as an agent is to educate your landlords and keep them informed and keep them up to date. There's a lot of misinformation that floats about, and you have to keep everybody right as best you can. But it's a changing situation for tenants as well. There's new legislation comes into place. There's new safety checks, and they suddenly think, oh, the world's already difficult enough to try and get a property, and then there's different things going on. Again, for tenants, you still hear some horrible stories where there's been fraudulent advertisements, people have lost their deposits. So it's about setting yourself out to say, we'll look after you. We'll look after you. If you're a landlord client, we'll take your asset and we will run it as best we possibly can, and we'll navigate where we are. And for tenants to know that, like anything, a good relationship, we'll look after them. And that's the best you can do, because at the end of the day, every day of the week, every year, somebody needs a good quality house to live in, and it's tough. So just sometimes it can be as busy as the market is, taking time and pausing and giving both the landlord and the tenant a breathing space.
Yeah.
It goes a long way. And yeah, that's what I would say across.
You're so right about the amount of misinformation that's out there, that things that might happen or are likely to happen but actually haven't happened or might never happen. It's a confusing world. Matt, would you agree with cautious optimism? That's the phrase that we've been using.
Yeah, I would agree with cautious optimism. I think that's fair. We've seen more properties come to the market in the local area comparative to this time last year, which is great. Sales agreed are up about 10% across the area as well, which is a strong indication that things are moving in the right direction. Obviously, we've had the Bank of England base rate announcement, first time in 2 years that someone on the MPC hasn't voted for a rate rise and one voted for rates to come down. So I think those factors, and inflation falling as well, all of those factors are creating a better environment to move house. And so I'm cautiously optimistic. Yeah.
Good. I mean, that's the theme I'm picking up from all of you, actually. Business is brisk. Martin, are there divisions in your region? Do you see some areas gathering in popularity? It always intrigues me. I love to spot sort of market anomalies where one area suddenly becomes popular or offers better value. Or do you see that across your patch?
Absolutely, Phil. It's funny, isn't it? We talk about the housing market as one entity, and as this podcast shows, things are happening in different areas at different times, all of the time. There's thousands of housing markets up and down the country, and actually there's lots and lots of housing markets happening in our local area as well. And there's always, whatever housing market, whatever the economic trends are of that time, there's always local factors that will impact on local markets. If it's school catchment areas, if it's commuter links, if it's a particular popular postcode, that it doesn't matter what market we're acting in, people want to be buying there, and that continues constantly. What we are seeing in Leicestershire, what I've noticed massively over the last couple of years, certainly this year, maybe last year as well, is buyers are looking for a move to quality. They want quality properties. They want something that they can move straight into. Maybe that's because trades are hard to find. Maybe it's because it's expensive to do improvements. Maybe it is because they just want an easy quality of life. But maybe 10 years ago, people were looking for the renovation project, probably in a more desirable mindset than the finished product. Now they want that safety of knowing that cost of living and the expenses is a little bit higher when they're buying their new property, and they want a safe quality home to be moving into.
I'd not thought of it, but you're right. 10 years ago, everyone wanted to add value, do work, and nowadays people. Is that a change of attitude, or as you say, that it's got harder to get workmen, it's got more expensive?
I think there's more risk involved, isn't there? And also, it's just, I think, as a mindset, we're not all looking to add value constantly. People are looking at homes as their home, rather than property as a constant investment.
Again, something that I've pondered on in the past is the billions of pounds that are spent in all the DIY and the building shops by members of the public, not builders, but that number is never actually factored in to what's into the housing market analysis, because it's all spent on improving people's houses. How about Bath? Any particular trends, or is it as you explained?
You asked me earlier about whether buy-to-let landlords were investing, and I wasn't able to be altogether positive about that. We are still seeing investment in the sector, and for some landlords, it's still a very sound investment. But the real issue is the number of landlords who are choosing to sell. And there are unfortunately a lot of reasons at the moment why a landlord might consider that. We're obviously dealing with high mortgage rates. Recently, there have been quite punitive tax breaks against landlords. The rising cost of maintenance, insurance, service charges have soared lately. So I recently read a fact from Inland Revenue that when you compare the number of landlords selling, compare it to pre-COVID figures, now it's up by about 40%. More landlords selling now. So it's also not the only challenge that tenants are facing when we're talking about this rental supply crisis. I'm in Bath, which is a tourist city. The number of Airbnbs locally in the last 5 years has increased by 250%. So there's that drain on rental stock is coming from multiple different areas, and it's proving a real challenge to tenants. And to turn that into real terms, just to give you one example, I remember we had a chap in our office last year who was desperately looking for a place to rent, and he had a deadline because he was moving to Bath to accept a job. And if he couldn't find a place to rent by that weekend, he wasn't going to be able to accept the job. And it's heartbreaking to see, when you turn it into real terms, the real life impact it can have on individuals and social mobility and people moving to things like jobs. So again, it comes back to that need to perhaps create a greater incentive for investment in the sector.
There's so many challenges and variables, but I guess that's what keeps us all engaged and interested, because it's constantly moving. That is the marketplace. Can I just finish off with just a few brief top tips, Matt? If someone's selling in Worthing, what would be your advice?
Well, naturally, I have to say use a Propertymark agent.
Let's start with that.
That one's ticked off the list. Price correctly to start with. Cautious optimism is not. Don't be overly optimistic. We do still see too many agents overvaluing, and then a property will sit in the market. It will go stale. It becomes harder and harder to sell. So don't get sort of don't see the dollar signs and just choose the agent who price is highest. Look at what they're basing that value on. If that high value comes with a 20-week sole agency agreement, there's a reason why, and they need that long period of time. So price correctly, and a property will sell in this market.
Okay. Buying in Loughborough, Martin, key pieces of advice. What do people need to think about?
I'd say to any buyer, look past the photographs. Now more than ever, there's more information for people. Now estate agents with material information need to give buyers information on unavoidable costs, broadbands, utility, tenure information, any restrictions. Can you run a business from that property? Can you have a sign-written van outside the front? Buyers want peace of mind. There's more information out there. Don't stop at the photographs. Read what the estate agent is saying about the property so they can buy with that quality of mind.
Good advice. Louise, renting in Edinburgh, I know it's hard, but what would your advice to a tenant who is perhaps accepting a job?
I would suggest quite a few things. First of all, yes, look for a reputable agent. Sign up to every alert going, but also consider different areas. Edinburgh's actually got tremendous transport. So you might have a notion that you want to stay in a Stockbridge or a Bruntsfield, but suddenly consider different areas. And also be aware of different opportunities, because we have an emerging build-to-rent sector, which is finally getting off the ground within the Scottish and both Edinburgh context. So actually, there is more property in the pipeline. Okay. So it's being aware of all your options, really. And being fast off the mark.
Speedy. Toby, in Bath, are there any build-to-rent? Is that something that you're seeing?
Build to rent is not such a big thing in Bath because we're a World Heritage city and opportunities for development are relatively thin on the ground. But I know that elsewhere that is representing quite an opportunity. Any advice for tenants? I've got some top tips for tenants anywhere. So firstly, I'd say don't rely on the portals any longer. Not every property will go on the portals, because as a company, we have a choice. If we place a one-bed flat on the portals, we'll get 50 inquiries overnight. But if we know somebody who will be perfect for that property, we can cut out all that work for ourselves and go directly to them. So befriend your local agent and don't be afraid to be a right nuisance. Stay at the front of their minds. Try and act quickly, because properties won't hang around. Most agents will offer video viewings if you're unable to get to the area yourself in person. And lastly, I would say use a reputable agent, preferably a Propertymark agent. And you might say, Phil, that's me being completely self-serving, but there is a very good reason for that, and a serious reason. There's been a real rise in rental fraud over the last few years, and these are criminals who are capitalizing on this rental supply crisis. Okay. So last few years, there's been more than 4,000 reported instances of rental fraud, and prospective tenants have collectively lost over £6 million to fraudsters. So it's a very good reason to use a reputable agent.
Yeah, very, very good advice. And I love what you're talking about is develop relationships with agents. People want to deal with people and they remember faces. So
absolutely.
Go in and see your agents, meet with them.
Exactly. If you can go in person, all the better. Really make your number with them and properly get to know them. Yeah,
makes a big help.
We're a friendly bunch, really.
Selling and buying in Staffordshire. Top tips at the moment, how to perform?
So selling, definitely go for a fully professionally trained agent. Research the agents, make sure they're properly qualified. Obviously, we're sitting in Propertymark, but absolutely find a Propertymark. And then similar to the rentals in Bath, really, when you're buying, don't just rely on the portals. Agents, you need to befriend the agents. It's about, don't just, register for the alerts, but quite frankly, build a relationship up with the agents, because agents where they're sold will capture you and look after you and know your needs and know what you're after and be able to tell you what's coming on. It's about communication. This job is about communicating, and whether that be with sellers, buyers, landlords, tenants, it's about communication.
Well, I'm picking up you're all incredibly busy, but there are challenges out there. But please keep doing what you're doing. I really appreciate you taking the time out. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Phil. Thank you.